Look, I am going to be honest with you right now. When the humans first showed up in our galaxy, we thought they were the most boring species we had ever encountered. I mean, seriously. The Galactic Council had seen thousands of civilizations rise and fall, and these pink, hairless mammals seemed about as threatening as a particularly lazy houseplant. My name is Vex, by the way. Yeah, I know. Not the most creative name my parents could have come up with. But when you are the 47th child in a brood of 83, you take what you get. I work as a diplomatic observer for the Council, which is basically a fancy way of saying I watch new species fumble around the galaxy and take notes about their inevitable failures. The humans arrived in the year 2347 by their calendar. They came in these clunky metal boxes they called starships, looking like someone had strapped engines to a filing cabinet and hoped for the best. Their first representative was a woman named Dr. Elizabeth Cade, tall, thin, with hair the color of rust and these piercing green eyes that seemed to calculate everything they looked at. She smiled a lot. Too much if you ask me. "Greetings," she said in perfectly accented Universal Standard, which was impressive considering they had only decoded our language 6 months prior. "We come in peace and friendship." Council Chair Thum, a blob of sentient gas contained in a pressure suit, rippled with what I had learned to recognize as amusement. "Of course you do," he wheezed through his vocoder. "They all do. Here is the thing about the Galactic Council. We had seen it all. The Cortaxians, who could bend metal with their minds. The Sylvics, who lived for 3,000 years and remembered everything. The Drachnor, who could survive in hard vacuum and ate radiation for breakfast. Every species brought something to the table. Some trick, some ability, some evolutionary advantage that made them special. Humans? They had opposable thumbs. Congratulations. So did half the species in the galaxy." But Elizabeth Cade just kept smiling. "We understand we are newcomers here," she said. "We have much to learn. We ask only for the opportunity to observe, to understand, and perhaps when the time comes to contribute." "Contribute what, exactly?" asked Councillor Bryn, a crystalline entity whose entire body chimed like wind chimes when she spoke. "What makes humanity worthy of council consideration?" Elizabeth paused. For exactly 3 seconds. I counted. Then she said, "Nothing yet, but give us time." That answer should have been their death sentence. Species who could not justify their existence were typically ignored, left to fade into obscurity on their little backwater worlds. Whole, but something about the way she said it made Thum laugh. A real laugh, not the polite acknowledgement most council members gave to inferior beings. "Very well," he said. "You may establish an embassy, you may observe, but understand this, humans. The galaxy is not a kind place. It does not suffer the weak or the useless. Prove your worth, or be forgotten." Elizabeth bowed. "Understood. Thank you for this opportunity." And that was it. The humans set up their embassy on Nexus Station, a massive orbital platform that served as the Council's primary headquarters. They sent observers to Council sessions. They studied. They learned. They took notes on everything. And they were quiet. I mean, really quiet.
Unnaturally quiet.
Most new species could not shut up. They would constantly petition for resources, for trade agreements, for technology transfers. They would beg and plead and promise anything for a taste of our advanced science. Not the humans. They just watched.
Well, for years.
Decades. Centuries. By the time I had been assigned to monitor them full-time, it had been almost 200 years since their arrival. Their embassy had gone through 6 different ambassadors. The current one was a man named Marcus Webb, stocky and gray-haired, with a face that looked like it had seen too many disappointments, and stopped caring about one more. "How are your people doing, Marcus?" I asked during one of our regular check-ins. It was 2541 now, and I had been doing this job long enough to recognize when a species was dying out. The humans had established exactly 0 colonies outside their home system. They had requested exactly 0 technologies. They had proposed exactly 0 trade agreements. Marcus sipped something brown and bitter-smelling from a ceramic cup.
"Coffee," he explained, seeing my expression. "Want some?"
"Will it kill me?" "Probably not, but it might make you wish it had." I declined. "Seriously, Marcus, are your people giving up? Every other species in your situation would have either aggressively expanded by now or collapsed entirely." He smiled, that same smile Elizabeth Cade had worn 2 centuries ago. "We are fine, Vex. Just learning." "Learning what? You have had 200 years of access to council records. What could possibly take this long?" Marcus set down his cup. "Everything. he said simply. We are learning everything. How you think, how you fight, how you trade, how you lie, how you love. Every species has patterns, vex, predictable responses to predictable situations. We are cataloging all of them. That sent a chill down my spine. Well, not a spine exactly. My species has more of a segmented support structure, but you get the idea. Because Marcus said, leaning back in his chair, when you are the weakest person in the room, the best strategy is to shut up and listen. You learn who the real powers are, who the fools are, who can be trusted, and who will stab you in the back the first chance they get. You learn what everyone wants, and more importantly, what everyone fears. I should have reported that conversation. I really should have, but something stopped me. Maybe curiosity. Maybe the first stirrings of actual respect for these patient watching humans. The galaxy meanwhile kept turning. The Cortaxians went to war with the Draknor over mining rights in the Epsilon sector. It was brutal. Millions died. The Council tried to mediate, but both sides had too much pride invested. The war dragged on for 30 years before finally sputtering out in exhausted stalemate. The humans watched, took notes. The Sylvix Collective experienced a philosophical schism that split their civilization in two. Half believed in technological transcendence, uploading consciousness into machines. The other half believed in genetic purity, refusing all augmentation. They spent 50 years arguing before finally agreeing to disagree and going their separate ways. The humans watched, took notes. A plague swept through the Mexian systems, killing 80% of their population before our medical experts could develop a cure. The surviving Mexians begged for aid, for resources to rebuild. The Council voted on a relief package. It failed by 3 votes because the Cortaxians and Draknor were still bitter from their war and refused to agree on anything. The humans watched, took notes, and quietly sent 3 of their own medical ships to Mexian space with supplies and doctors. No fanfare, no press releases. They just helped. Marcus mentioned it casually during one of our meetings. Seemed like the right thing to do, he said. The Council will not reward you for this, I told him. They will see it as weakness. Wasting resources on a dying species. We know, Marcus said. We do not need a reward. By 2647, something was changing in the galaxy. Tensions were rising. The Council that had maintained peace for 10,000 years was starting to fracture. Old alliances were crumbling. New power blocks were forming. And in the shadows, something dangerous was stirring. They called themselves the Ascendancy. A coalition of 12 species who believed they had transcended the need for democratic process. They were the strongest, the smartest, the most evolved. Why should they bow to the decisions of lesser beings? They wanted to overthrow the Council and establish a new order. Their order. Council Chair Thum, now in his 3rd century of service, called an emergency session. I was there, of course. So was Marcus Webb, sitting quietly in the human observer section, as always. The Ascendancy has issued an ultimatum, Thum announced, his voice heavy through the vocoder. Submit to their authority or face consequences. They have amassed a fleet of 12,000 warships at the edge of Council space. Our intelligence suggests they plan to attack within 30 days. Panic. Actual, genuine panic rippled through the chamber. The Council had grown soft over millennia of peace. Most member species had reduced their militaries to ceremonial forces. We had maybe 3,000 combat-capable ships scattered across hundreds of systems. We were outnumbered 4 to 1. We must negotiate, Councillor Bryn chimed frantically. Perhaps we can reach an accommodation. We must fight, growled Councillor Krenth of the Draknor. Better to die with honor than live as slaves. Easy for you to say, hissed Representative Slicks of the Mexians. Your people have not been reduced to a fraction of your former strength. The arguing went on for hours. No consensus, no plan, just fear and finger-pointing, and the slow realization that the great Galactic Council was about to fall. Then Marcus Webb stood up. Just stood up, did not ask for permission, did not wait to be recognized, just rose from his seat in the observer section where he had sat silently for 106 years. Every eye, sensor, and consciousness in that chamber turned to look at him. Excuse me, he said politely. I believe humanity would like to contribute now. The silence was absolute. Even the background hum of the station's life support seemed to hold its breath. Thum's pressure suit rippled. Humanity, you have a dozen outdated ships and 1 colony in your home system. What could you possibly offer? Marcus smiled. Well, that damn smile. Everything you need to win this war. But first we need to talk terms. Lulito. Disclosures. Let's talk terms. Terms? Counselor Bryn chimed in disbelief. You dare bargain at a time like this?
Yes.
Marcus said calmly. Because here is what we know. The ascendancy is strong, but they are arrogant. They have never faced real opposition. They think this will be easy. They are wrong. We have studied them. Every species in their coalition. Every ship class. Every tactical doctrine. Every commander. For 300 years we have been preparing for exactly this moment. I felt my breathing accelerate.
You knew this was coming?
We suspected conflict was inevitable, Marcus replied. The council's structure is inherently unstable. Too many competing interests. Too little enforcement mechanism. It was only a matter of time before someone tried to seize control, so we prepared. How? Krenth demanded. What have you been doing? Marcus gestured and a holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber. Star charts, fleet compositions, supply lines.
Tactical analyses, detailed profiles of every single ascendancy commander, complete with psychological assessments and predicted behavior patterns.
We have been preparing for war, Marcus said simply. Not because we wanted one, because we knew you would need us when it came. And now it is here, so let us discuss what humanity requires in exchange for our assistance. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop 10 degrees. You would extort us? Bryn's chimes were sharp with outrage. In our darkest hour? No, Marcus said. We would negotiate fair compensation for services rendered. Consider it a learning opportunity. You are about to discover what humanity contributes to the galaxy. We are the ones who plan for the worst while hoping for the best. We are the ones who watch and wait and prepare. We are the ones who do not panic when things go wrong because we already worked out what to do 300 years ago. The hum was silent for a long moment. Then he laughed. That same laugh from 3 centuries ago. Name your price, Marcus Webb, of Earth. Full council membership. Voting rights. Equal standing with all other species. And we want it in writing ratified by every current member, before a single human ship enters combat. Outrageous, someone muttered. Necessary, Tomb corrected. Agreed. Draft the documents. We vote within the hour. And just like that, everything changed. The vote was contentious. Several species objected, but fear is a powerful motivator. And with the Ascendancy fleet bearing down on us, the Council could not afford to refuse. The measure passed with 78% approval. Marcus Webb became Ambassador. Marcus Webb of the Terran Systems, full Council member, with all rights and privileges thereof. Then he made a call. One call. No encryption. No secrecy. He wanted the Ascendancy to hear this. Admiral Cade, this is Ambassador Webb. Authorization code Alpha 77 Tango. Execute Operation Silence Breaker. You are weapons free. Wait.
Haiti?
As in, Elizabeth Cade's great-granddaughter, Marcus confirmed, seeing my expression. Turns out stubbornness runs in the family. She has been waiting for this order for 80 years. Holographic displays throughout the chamber, lit up with sensor data, and we watched in stunned disbelief as reality rewrote itself. Human ships, thousands of them, emerging from dark space, from asteroid fields, from radiation shadows where no sensors could detect them. They had been hiding throughout Council space for over 2 centuries, building, preparing, waiting. Sleek warships that moved like predators. Carriers launching fighter craft that swarmed like angry insects. Massive dreadnoughts bristling with weapons we could not identify, and every single one of them was heading directly toward the Ascendancy fleet. What? Counselor Krenth could barely speak. How many ships do you have? Marcus checked his datapad. Currently deploying 43,000 combat vessels. We have another 70,000 in reserve if this goes badly. The chamber erupted in chaos. Questions, demands, accusations of espionage and betrayal and a dozen other crimes. Marcus just waited for the noise to die down. Then he spoke. For 300 years you thought we were weak, irrelevant, not worth your attention. And we let you think that. Because while you ignored us, we were working, building, preparing, on to conquer you. Not to rule you, but to be ready when you needed us. Because that is what humans do. We plan for the worst. We hope for the best. And when the crisis comes, we do not panic. We act. On the displays, the human fleet was spreading out in formations so precise they looked like computer simulations. Admiral Cade will speak with the Ascendancy leadership now, Marcus said. She will offer them one chance to withdraw peacefully. If they refuse, he did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. The Ascendancy did not withdraw. Of course they did not. They were arrogant. Superior, convinced of their inevitable victory. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Ascendancy fleet had been reduced to scattered wreckage. Human casualties were minimal. Ascendancy casualties were catastrophic. And the galaxy learned what happens when you mistake patience for weakness. But that is where this part of the story ends. Because what happened next, what humanity did after proving their strength, that is when things got really interesting. And terrifying. And somehow, despite everything, hopeful. But you will have to wait to hear about that. So, where were we? All right. Humanity just utterly demolished the most powerful military coalition the galaxy had seen in 3,000 years. In 6 hours. With minimal casualties. No big deal. Except it was a very big deal. The morning after the battle, or what passes for morning on a space station that orbits nothing, I walked into the council chamber expecting chaos. What I got was silence. The terrified kind. The kind where everyone is reassessing every assumption they ever made about reality. Marcus Webb sat in the newly designated Terran council seat, looking exactly as calm as he had the day before, like he had not just orchestrated the most decisive military victory in recorded history. He was drinking that awful coffee again. "Morning, Vex," he said pleasantly. "Sleep well?" I had not slept at all. My species needs about 4 hours every cycle, and I had spent all 4 of them staring at casualty reports. The Ascendancy lost 9,000 ships. 9,000. Their coalition is collapsing. 4 species have already surrendered. 3 more are begging for mercy. The remaining 5 are having civil wars about whether to keep fighting or flee into deep space. Marcus nodded.
Yes, we are monitoring that. Admiral Cade has orders to accept any and all surrenders. No revenge, no war crimes.
Just disarmament and repatriation. That is it? You crush them and then just let them go? What else would we do? Marcus looked genuinely confused. We are not trying to build an empire, Vex. We were defending the Council against an existential threat. Threat eliminated. Mission accomplished. Counselor Bryn materialized beside us in a shimmer of light and sound. Her crystalline body was vibrating at a higher frequency than normal, which in her species indicated extreme stress. Ambassador Webb, the Council requires an explanation. Immediately. Of course, Marcus said agreeably. What would you like to know? Everything. Her chimes were almost painful to hear. Where did those ships come from? How did you hide them? What else are you hiding? How long have you been militarizing? Are we in danger? Is this a coup? Marcus held up one hand. Breathe, Counselor. Well, not literally in your case, but you understand what I mean. Let me address your concerns in order. The ships were built in our home system and several uninhabited systems we quietly surveyed and claimed over the past 3 centuries. We hid them using a combination of stealth technology, strategic positioning, and the fact that nobody was looking for them because you all assumed we were irrelevant. What else are we hiding? Nothing that threatens you. How long have we been militarizing? Since the day we joined this council. Are you in danger? Not from us. Is this a coup? Absolutely not. We just saved your lives. You are welcome, by the way. Bryn's vibrations slowed slightly. This is not reassuring. I know, Marcus said sympathetically. Look, I understand this is a lot to process. You have spent 300 years thinking humanity was weak and harmless. Well, it turns out we were just quiet and prepared. That does not make us your enemies. It makes us your most reliable allies. But allies who lied to us for 3 centuries, Counselor Krenth growled, stomping into the conversation. The Draknor looked angry. But then again, they always looked angry. It was their default setting. You deceived the entire council. No, Marcus corrected. We simply did not advertise our capabilities. There is a difference. We answered every question asked, honestly. You just did not ask the right questions. Nobody ever asked how many ships we had. Nobody asked what we were doing in our home system. Nobody cared enough to check. So yes, we took advantage of your lack of interest. But deception? No, we just practiced intelligent operational security. Thum rippled into the discussion, his pressure suit hissing slightly.
Semantics. Ambassador,
You deliberately cultivated an image of weakness. We cultivated an image of non-threatening, Marcus said. Again, there is a difference. We were not weak. We were strategic. And before you get too angry about it, remember that strategy just saved every single one of your lives. The Ascendancy had 12,000 ships. You had 3,000 outdated vessels, and no unified command structure. Without human intervention, you would have lost badly. Some of you would have been enslaved. Some would have been exterminated. Some would have been allowed to survive as puppet states. None of you would have remained free. The silence that followed was heavy with uncomfortable truth. So what now? I asked, because someone had to. Humanity has the largest fleet in the galaxy. You have proven you can win any fight. What do you want? Marcus smiled that infuriating smile. The ability to see problems coming years before they arrive and prepare solutions in advance. The ability to see problems coming years before they arrive and prepare solutions in advance. And what do you want in return? Bryn asked suspiciously. Equal partnership. Fair trade. Mutual respect. The usual things civilized beings want from each other. Oh, and we would like to propose some reforms to the council structure. Not major changes, just some adjustments to the voting procedures and resource allocation systems. Nothing too dramatic. The way he said it made my skin crawl, or would have if I had skin. You are going to reshape the entire Galactic Order, are you not? Only the parts that are broken, Marcus said cheerfully. And trust me, a lot of parts are broken. We have 300 years of documentation on systemic failures, corruption, inefficiency, and structural weaknesses. We have been waiting for the right moment to suggest improvements. This seems like that moment. Over the next 6 months, humanity did exactly what Marcus promised. They reshaped the galaxy. But not through conquest or intimidation. Through competence. Through competence. They proposed a new military alliance structure with shared command and coordinated training. Every species contributed ships, but humans provided the command framework and strategic planning. Result, the most effective defensive force in galactic history. They suggested economic reforms that stabilized currency fluctuations and opened new trade routes. Species that had been struggling for centuries suddenly found themselves prosperous. Human economists had apparently spent 200 years analyzing galactic markets and identifying inefficiencies. They offered technology transfers, not their best stuff obviously, but significant upgrades to medical systems, agricultural techniques, and industrial processes, freely shared, no strings attached. Well, except for the expectation that recipient species would use the tech responsibly and help others in turn. They even mediated disputes. Turns out that 3 centuries of watching everyone argue had given humans an almost supernatural ability to understand what each species really wanted versus what they claimed to want. They could cut through diplomatic nonsense like a plasma torch through butter. And they did it all while maintaining the smallest actual territory in the council. Humans still only officially controlled their home system and 3 small colonies. They did not want your planets. They did not want your resources. They just wanted a functional galactic civilization where problems got solved instead of ignored. It was deeply disturbing. I do not trust this, Counselor Krent admitted during a private conversation.
I probably should not have been listening to.
Nobody is this altruistic.
What is their real agenda?
Maybe they are just genuinely interested in making things better, suggested Representative Fenn of the Mexians. Her people had good reason to like humans. Those medical ships 300 years ago had saved their species, and humans had continued to quietly help them rebuild ever since. Nobody does something for nothing, Krent insisted. There is always an angle, always a profit motive, always something they want that they are not admitting. I thought about that conversation for days, because Krent was right. In galactic politics, everyone had an agenda. Everyone wanted something, usually power, resources, or territory. What did humans want? So I asked Marcus directly. We were in his office, which he had decorated with bizarre human artifacts, plants in pots, pictures of landscapes, a small sculpture of a bird, weird species. What do you people actually want? I demanded. And do not give me that line about contributing to galactic civilization. What is your real goal? Marcus looked up from whatever he was reading on his datapad. You want the honest answer? The one that will probably sound insane to you? Yes. Please, I need to understand. He leaned back in his chair. We want to survive, Vex, long-term, like millions of years long-term. And we figured out something important early in our development. Species that only care about themselves do not survive. They get eliminated by other species, or they destroy themselves, or they stagnate and fade away. But species that build strong communities, that help their neighbors, that create systems where everyone benefits, those species last. So we are not being altruistic. We are being intelligently selfish. We are making the galaxy a place where humanity can thrive for the next million years. And the way to do that is to make sure everyone else can thrive too. I stared at him. That is the most convoluted justification for basic decency I have ever heard. Welcome to human psychology, Marcus said with a laugh. We are really good at finding complicated reasons to do simple things, but the result is the same. We help you. You help us. Everyone wins. It is not charity. It is investment. And if someone decides they do not want to play by these rules, his expression went cold. Like someone had flipped a switch. Then they learn what happens when you threaten human investments. The ascendancy found out. Trust me, nobody wants to be the second example. That should have scared me more than it did. But honestly, after 300 years of council dysfunction, of watching species suffer because nobody could agree on solutions, of seeing preventable disasters happen because of political cowardice, having someone actually willing to enforce consequences for bad behavior was almost refreshing. Almost. The real test came 2 years later. A species called the Vorath, who had not been involved in the ascendancy conflict, decided to test human resolve. They invaded a neighboring system, claiming ancient territorial rights. The invaded species, the Planari, appealed to the council for help. Under the old system there would have been months of debate, committees, subcommittees, votes that failed because of political maneuvering. By the time anyone acted, the Vorthak would have established control, and the situation would have become a frozen conflict. Under the new system, Admiral Cade had a human fleet at the Vorath border within 18 hours. She sent one message. You have 24 hours to withdraw all forces and pay reparations to the Planari.
If you do not, we will remove you.
This is your only warning. The Vorthak leadership laughed. They had 8,000 ships. Humans had pulled most of their fleet back after the Ascendancy War. They thought they saw weakness. They were wrong. Turns out, those 70,000 reserve ships Marcus mentioned, they were not a bluff. Humans had industrial capacity that made the rest of the galaxy look like children playing with blocks. They could build ships faster than most species could crew them. The Vorthak Rodriguez issued a formal apology. The entire crisis lasted 36 hours. You did not even fire a shot, I said to Marcus afterward. Did not need to, he replied.
Everyone learned from the ascendancy example.
Nobody wants to be the species that called humanity's bluff and found out it was not a bluff. Deterrence works best when you only have to demonstrate it once. Over the following decades, something remarkable happened. The galaxy stabilized, trade flourished, conflicts decreased, species that had been enemies for centuries found ways to cooperate. Scientific advancement accelerated as researchers from different civilizations collaborated freely. It was not perfect. There were still problems.
Still conflicts.
Still species that resented human influence or chafed under the new order. But compared to the chaos of the previous millennia, it was practically a golden age. And humanity just kept watching, learning, adapting, always 3 steps ahead of everyone else. I retired from diplomatic service eventually, took a position as a historian, documenting this strange new era. I interviewed Marcus Webb one last time before he retired as ambassador. He was old by then, even by human standards. Gray hair had turned white, face lined with age. Do you think it will last? I asked him. This piece you helped build? He smiled that smile. You are older now, warier, but still the same essential expression. Nothing lasts forever, Vex. Eventually there will be new threats, new challenges, new crises.
He troll.
But be prepared for that too. We taught the galaxy how to prepare, how to think long-term, how to solve problems before they become catastrophes. So when the next big crisis comes, you will not need us to save you. You will be able to save yourselves. That was always the real plan. You spent 300 years preparing to make yourselves obsolete? No, he corrected. We spent 300 years preparing to make everyone strong enough that we are just one voice among many, instead of the voice everyone depends on. Oh! That is the goal. Equal partnership. Remember? He died 6 months later. Natural causes. They gave him a state funeral. Representatives from 400 species attended. Even the Vorthak sent someone, which tells you how much things had changed. I stood at the memorial, watching species that had once hated each other share stories about this stubborn human who had reshaped their galaxy through sheer patience and strategic planning. And I realized something. Humanity had not conquered us. They had not subjugated us. They had not forced their will upon us. They had done something much more subtle and much more effective. They had made themselves indispensable by making everyone else better. They had accumulated power by giving power away. They had achieved dominance by teaching everyone else how to be strong. It was the most human thing possible. Complicated, contradictory, brilliant. Ambassador Webb's replacement was a young woman named Kira Osei, sharp-eyed, quick-witted, with that same damned patient smile. I met with her shortly after she took office. So, I said, what is humanity planning for the next 300 years? She laughed. If I told you, it would not be much of a plan, would it? But I can say this. We are still watching, still learning, still preparing, because that is what we do. The galaxy thinks it knows us now, thinks it understands human capabilities and human intentions, which means everyone has stopped paying close attention, which means it is time to start preparing for whatever comes next. Should I be worried? Only if you are planning to threaten galactic stability, Kira said pleasantly. Otherwise you are fine. We like you, Vex. Always have. You were one of the few who tried to understand us from the beginning. That matters to us. Loyalty, friendship, trust. These things matter. We remember who our friends are. And your enemies? Her smile did not change, but something in her eyes went very cold. We remember them too, for a very long time. I left that meeting with a strange mix of emotions, comfort and concern, gratitude and unease, because that is what humanity did to you. They saved your life while making you acutely aware they could just as easily end it. They were your best friends and most dangerous potential enemies simultaneously. But here is the thing. Here is what I learned after spending a lifetime studying these strange, patient, terrifyingly competent beings. They meant what they said. They genuinely wanted partnership, cooperation. A galaxy where everyone thrived, not because they were saints but because they were smart enough to recognize that their own survival depended on everyone else's survival. They had been silent for centuries, because they were listening, learning, understanding, and when they finally spoke they said exactly what needed to be said. Nothing more, nothing less. Just the truth, delivered at precisely the right moment for maximum effect. That is humanity. Quiet until the moment they need to be loud. Weak until the moment they need to be strong. Patient until the moment action becomes necessary. And always, always 300 years ahead of everyone else. The galaxy thought it was teaching humanity how to survive among the stars. Turns out humanity was teaching us something far more important. How to think, how to plan, how to prepare, how to be more than we were. And we are still learning that lesson. Every single day. Because humans are still watching, still taking notes, still preparing for threats we cannot yet imagine. Somewhere out there, human ships are hiding in dark space waiting for the next crisis. Human analysts are studying patterns, predicting problems decades before they manifest. Human diplomats are building relationships, creating networks of trust and cooperation that will hold when everything else falls apart. And we sleep soundly, knowing they are out there, our silent guardians, our patient teachers, our complicated, contradictory, utterly irreplaceable friends. Humanity was silent for centuries. Then we spoke once. Once was enough. The galaxy listened, and everything changed.